Oh, my gain is very loud. Let's go. Yo, I am hyped for Ahsoka. I don't know about you guys. Probably blowing out some eardrums, but I hope you guys are ready to go. It's been a long time coming, man. This Ahsoka show is something I am excited for. I know you guys are too. Those of us that have been with the character for all this dang time, man. Since 2008, when she was first introduced in the OG Clone Wars movie, we've come a long, long way, man. I'm hyped though. I hope you guys are too. It's good to see you all in the chat. Let's get it going. Let's talk all about the Ahsoka show. We're going to be busy all night. We got a watch party coming up later at 5:30. So let's get it going. Let's talk about the show. Get our final predictions in. And let me know how hyped you guys are in the chat for the Ahsoka show. Let's go. Welcome back to Vader's Lair. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Tano Tuesday. Oh man, I love that they changed the time from midnight on Wednesdays to Tano Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Let's freaking get the hype going right there, man. I don't know about you guys, but it is so dang exciting to get a Star Wars show at a reasonable hour. Heck, to get anything on the Disney's at a reasonable hour. And right off the bat too, I want to make sure to say, you know, these shows that we watch and have the privilege of seeing be made are all thanks really to the writers, actors, people that work on it, that make it happen. And shout out to them, because obviously there's two giant strikes going on right now between the WGA and the SAG-AFTRA strikes. And we definitely stand in solidarity with them. All proceeds of for the channel will be going towards the Ahsoka show during basically the entirety of it throughout the next 7 weeks. Heck, even after that, while the strike is ongoing, the channel's not making money anyway right now with demonetization recently, and that's okay. Any proceeds still from donations or whatever you guys want to tip, I'm going to make sure that it's going to the SAG-AFTRA and WGA strikes, as we definitely stand with them. So, with that being said, let's talk some Ahsoka, y'all. And I see all the hype in the chat. It's freaking hype. Let's go, man. We've been waiting so long. For those that maybe haven't seen the animated projects, which I'm guessing most of you guys here on the channel have, but if you're coming in, you're newer to the channel, first of all, a big welcome to you. But, and make sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. But, if you haven't seen any of the animated projects, any of the other Star Wars stuff that's not just live action, I understand. Maybe animation's not your cup of tea. But you're missing out on some of the best Star Wars stories that there has ever been. Some of the best Star Wars stories there's ever been, truly. And you're missing out on Dave Filoni's greatness, the apprentice of George Lucas, which is really what this whole show is kind of the continuation of. And the next, you know, I think Star Wars Obsession in the chat once called it the next opod, or, you know, the next chapter to the story. Like, it's continuing here, man. Like, I'm hyped for it, dude. Dave Filoni is that guy. Back in 2003, George Lucas hired Dave Filoni after the creation of the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars series, which that series is pretty cool, but it's a little micro series. It's like 2 kind of longer episodes that kind of give a brief history of what happened to Anakin and Obi-Wan and the Jedi during the Clone Wars. So he basically brings in Dave Filoni, who was working on Avatar: The Last Airbender at the time. And he's like, yo, you worked on King of the Hill and Avatar: The Last Airbender. And he brings him in to talk to him. And he's like, all right, Dave, this is what a Jedi is. And he just kind of talks to him. Dave Filoni gets the job and doesn't even expect to get it. The two of them start working. Dave really becomes the apprentice of George. And George kind of tells him what he wants with Clone Wars, but gives him a lot of creative freedom. And so he's talking to him, creating these characters. Originally, they were talking about what they wanted the show to be, and Dave had this idea of a master and an apprentice, and was thinking about Ashla really being the character of Ahsoka at one point, and she was originally even going to be part of a crew that kind of became the idea for Rebels later on. But basically, Dave Filoni creates this Ahsoka character, and Ashla at the time, and she is trying to figure out who to make the master for her. Maybe even was thinking Plo Koon, because Dave Filoni is a big Plo Koon fan. And George goes, well, what if we make it, what if we make Anakin the master? And Dave's like, Anakin doesn't have a Padawan. And George looks at him and goes, Anakin has a Padawan. And so that's kind of how Ahsoka became the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker in a time that no fans really knew he had one. You know what I mean? So this is the story within the story that George likes to always ever expand and evolve. And so he goes on, he creates this Clone Wars story with George Lucas, the two of them kind of doing it side by side together, and George teaching him how to create, first of all, 2D animation or 3D animation, which he had never done. He was usually doing 2D stuff, and so the whole team had to learn how to do 3D animation. And then he basically also tried to make them shoot it and film it, I guess, in a way where it looked like a movie, like they were trying to actually shoot it in movie style. And so he's teaching them how to make movies. Basically, you're teaching everybody on the Clone Wars how to make movies through the years, and they end up creating this brilliant story that the Clone Wars becomes. Obviously, throughout season 1 and different stuff, there's kinks. They were kind of new to what they were doing at the time. They were breaking new grounds, as Star Wars usually does, as George Lucas likes to do. And from that, obviously, we continue with the Ahsoka story. She ends up going on all these awesome adventures with Anakin and Obi-Wan. She kind of really is the center of the Clone Wars. She's the main character in a way. She's in the most episodes of the Clone Wars, more than any other character, including Anakin and Obi-Wan. So Ahsoka really becomes the central story, and those of us that grew up with her, or were young at the time of the Clone Wars movie, and stayed up every Friday night, we had the opportunity to watch her story and really grow up with her in a way. And even at one point, I had an opportunity to tell Ashley Eckstein myself, when I saw her at Star Wars Celebration 2022, I was like, I really grew up with the Ahsoka character. I got so much love for you and what you guys have created with those shows. And she's like, I love that, man. Like, so many fans have tell me that, and it's the coolest thing in the world. And it's awesome. Like, there's so many of us that fell in love with the prequels at a young age and then grew up with this Ahsoka character. Even, adults watching with their children every Friday night, bringing the whole family into it and really watching this amazing Star Wars show on Cartoon Network. You know what I mean? Like, it was a freaking wild time. And so Ahsoka's character really grew throughout the Clone Wars. She obviously was very naive in the beginning, kind of snippy, if you will, or in Anakin really kind of banter, with Anakin only being a 20-something-year-old, 20-year-old during the Clone Wars at the time as he was. So, Ahsoka was a very young Padawan, which he kind of teased her for being a youngling still, which I thought was hilarious. And the two of them really start to grow a bond and connect to each other as Ahsoka grows and, really has to go through a war. You know what I mean? Like, they're all fighting a war, even though it's between droids and clones. They get sucked into this war. The Jedi get sucked in, and Ahsoka and Anakin have to deal with not only learning to become Jedi, but also being generals in a war. And so that's really the dynamic between the two of them. They're really good fighters. That, Anakin's very unorthodox with his way of teaching as it is as well. And initially Ahsoka was even assigned to Kenobi, quote unquote, but it was really a coup way for them to give it to Anakin and make him a master and try to basically teach Anakin how to let go. Because, eventually in every master and student relationship, and every, parent, daughter, son, parent and child relationship, eventually they leave the coop. They go out on their own and they do their own thing. You know what I mean? So as a master or a parent or a teacher, you want to make sure you prepare them for that. And that's the whole thing with Yoda kind of tricking Anakin into having this Padawan, was he really wanted him to learn from it and be able to grow and be able to let her go when the time came. And so Ahsoka's story continues. They end up going to this crazy place at one point in the middle of the Clone Wars where it's like, yo. And yes, Mateo, everybody in the chat, I will be streaming Ahsoka later tonight when it drops at about 6 p.m. We're going to be doing the stream a little bit early, probably like 5:30 in like 30 minutes from now. So we better get it going with this. Basically, though, crazy arc happens in the Clone Wars called the Mortis arc, which is one of my favorite arcs in the entire story, where basically Ahsoka, Anakin, and Obi-Wan get sucked into this world that's kind of like almost an altered dimension in Star Wars. I don't know exactly what to describe it as, but it's almost a different dimension in a way, where there's these godlike beings called the Ones, the Father, the Son, and the Daughter. And now the Father represents kind of the in-between of the light and the dark, while the Son is the dark and the Daughter is the light. And basically what happens while they're there, Ahsoka at one point gets, I guess you could say, mind controlled, or, you know, dark side endued. She gets taken over by the brother, the dark side user, who basically corrupts her and ends up killing her. And so the daughter ends up, with her dying breath, sacrificing herself to bring Ahsoka back to life in this story, which I know some crazy stuff with it that you might be missing in the Star Wars shows with Dave Filoni, I'm telling you. And so with the father, daughter, and the son, Ahsoka gets brought back by the daughter, and ever since then there's been this like little bird creature that is kind of like the embodiment of the daughter in a way, that follows Ahsoka around. Heck, Ahsoka herself could be an embodiment of the daughter. It's freaking hype, man. It's definitely hype. So, to kind of conclude with that story, though, that's a whole can of worms. And if you end up seeing Morai, or that little bird following Ahsoka around, that's what that whole thing is about. And we definitely might get some crazy stuff with those characters. And they have returned since. Ahsoka eventually goes on to leave the Jedi Order at one point, though, after a bombing happens at the Jedi Temple, and she ends up getting framed for it by Barriss Offee, the true perpetrator, or, you know, the true bomber, the true attacker of the Jedi Temple. And basically Barriss Offee was one of the best friends of Ahsoka during her time in the Clone Wars, who was another Padawan like her, similar age, that was actually the Padawan of Master Luminara. And basically what happens is she bombs the Jedi Temple because she feels that the Jedi have become soldiers in this war more than peacekeepers, which is true. And I mean, I don't think you should bomb the Jedi Temple to make that point, but it's true. They really did become more soldiers than peacekeepers in a way. And so Ahsoka gets framed for it, and the Jedi Council, being the Jedi Council, is totally like, oh, she definitely did it, even though she wasn't even there. Like, she wasn't even near Coruscant when the bombing happened. But they blamed her without any hesitation. Show no mercy. Damn, sounding like Palpatine over here. And so she ends up leaving the Order after proving her innocence. And it's a really big thing for Anakin, and actually, because like I said, like it was kind of an entire test by the Jedi Council to give him this Padawan and see how he could deal with her loss. And so with her having an issue with the Council as it was, and ending up leaving the Order, it almost only led Anakin further down the dark path, and further, you know, breaking his trust with the Jedi Council, and eventually helping to lead him to what eventually happened to him, becoming Darth Vader. Flash forward, though, Ahsoka goes through basically, though, after that, she goes on this whole journey where she's basically trying to figure out where she is in the galaxy, who she is in the galaxy now that she's not a Jedi. And she learns from the Martez sisters, two friends on the lower levels of Coruscant that she makes, basically what they view as the Jedi, and, like, you know, that Ahsoka is what they view the Jedi should be. You know what I mean? Like, she is. You know what I mean? Like, Ahsoka is more Jedi than the entire Jedi Order. She's an OG. You know what I mean? And so she goes on this whole journey afterwards, where she ends up fighting on Mandalore to try and help Bo-Katan free them from the tyranny of Maul during that time. So Darth Maul, yeah, he came back in the Clone Wars, ended up taking over Mandalore at one point, and Ahsoka and Bo-Katan end up going together to go kind of free the occupation of Mandalore by Maul. She ends up beating him with the help of the 501st and Captain Rex as well. And so as she's taking Maul back to Coruscant, that's when shit goes down. You know what I'm saying? Order 66 is executed. And even though Ahsoka is technically no longer a Jedi, Palpatine made sure to have some special orders. He's like, do it. Make sure Ahsoka Tano is killed. And so that's what happens. Like the clone she's with the 501st Legion, I guess they become the 332nd at that point. I don't know. I'm not too great with the clone squadron numbers, admittedly. But they end up turning on her because of Order 66, of course. She ends up actually removing Captain Rex's chip in the midst of all this chaos. And, the two of them end up surviving and kind of concluding the Clone War in one of the craziest Dave Filoni stories ever. Yeah, that definitely was a devastating arc, Tim. It was wild. Ronin Unchained, good to see you, my dude. Barriss was right, but her way of proving it was wrong. Yeah, you could say that again. Barriss was wildin'. She was wildin'. And a lot of fans actually think that Barriss Offee could end up showing up in the Ahsoka show. And T-minus 57 minutes until we get episodes 1 and 2, y'all. I am so ready. Okay. Finish it off, though. Ahsoka ends up showing back up during Star Wars Rebels, the greatest Star Wars story of ever. That's right. If you're missing out on these animated projects, I'm telling you, go watch them. We've got both our watch parties up for the entirety of the Clone Wars and now the entirety of Star Wars Rebels. So if you haven't watched them, you're going to see these 2 episodes of Ahsoka tonight and go, oh my gosh, I need to watch these. I got 5 on Barriss being the Inquisitor. Oh, certified gumbo. That would be lit. So when Ahsoka pops up in Rebels, though, it is the time of the Empire, and what ends up happening is she ends up having to come to terms with the fact that Anakin has become Darth Vader. And a big part of her story in that is actually at the midway point of Rebels, where her and Vader have a fight. Something that I think a lot of us fans never thought we would be able to see. A lot of us Clone Wars fans. A fight between Ahsoka and Vader. It blew our minds, and it totally lived up to it. We didn't even find out what happened at the end of the fight until the end of the show. So what ends up happening, though, is this insane story that is one of the greatest Star Wars stories of all time, called The World Between Worlds, where Ezra Bridger goes into this, I guess you could say, place between all time and space in the Star Wars universe, where everything is happening at once. There's a whole bunch of windows into different times within the Star Wars universe. And Ezra ends up walking up on the fight of Ahsoka and Vader and pulls her out right before Vader is about to deliver that final blow and kill her. So we had to wait like 2 years at one point to figure out if Ahsoka was still alive. And Dave Filoni's like, I don't know, is she? being the apprentice of George, he likes to mess with us, right? And so from that story, though, Ahsoka promised Ezra that she would find him when she came back. And the end of Rebels ended up happening with Ezra Bridger blasting off into the unknown regions with another fan favorite character that's only adding to the hype of the Ahsoka show, Grand Admiral Thrawn. We'll talk about him in a second here, because there's definitely some more lore to get to. But Ahsoka basically is now, well, seemingly taking on an apprentice, apparently. Which, I don't know if she still considers herself a Jedi at this point, because back in Rebels, she tells Vader, I am no Jedi. So maybe that was just a dig on him and what she had to go through at one point. But it could also be that Ahsoka doesn't really view herself as a Jedi. There's kind of been teases that she could be rebuilding the Order with Hu Yang, a droid that she ended up working with back in her days in the Clone Wars with younglings, that basically is older than, like, or basically existed since, I don't know, the beginning of the Jedi, and he knows, like, every lightsaber that there's ever been. Yeah, the big boss Thrawn, you already know. We'll get to him, I promise. And so Ahsoka and Sabine, her new apprentice, apparently, who is also a member of the Rebels crew back in the Star Wars Rebels show, are now going off on this adventure, most likely to find Ezra Bridger and stop the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn. So if you guys don't know Grand Admiral Thrawn, here's a little rundown of him. because this is all about some lore and all sorts of stuff. And make sure, let me know how hyped you guys are in the chat. Let me know, how excited are you for the Ahsoka show? Let's get it going. Let's get it going. Training in the Saber Call. Say what? Good to see you, Rello. What up, my dude? So with Thrawn, let's talk about him. Grand Admiral Thrawn is a character that was originally created in the 90s for the expanded universe. So technically his first creation and stories and everything, because he had a whole trilogy of books back in the day that was kind of the continuation of episodes of the original trilogy before the prequels even came out. And so Thrawn was a big deal back in the day, and a lot of people that were around at that time absolutely loved the Thrawn character. And it's part of why it's such a big deal that Thrawn is now coming into live action. It's super freaking cool. So Dave Filoni ended up bringing Thrawn back into canon in the Star Wars Rebels show, having him be kind of the main adversary of the Rebels during the back half of the show. And so with him being the main big bad at the time and Ezra blasting off with him, Thrawn went through all this stuff to basically become a part of the Empire at one point, basically to try and protect the galaxy. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive. You want to become a part of the Empire to protect the galaxy, but Thrawn's whole story is that he is a Chiss officer from the world, which, if you don't know who the Chiss are, they're think of the Blue Men crew. They're dudes with blue skin and these beady red eyes that are super intelligent, but Thrawn is like, almost even beyond that. Like, the dude is a absolute tactical genius. Think like evil Sherlock Holmes. Like, the dude is 5 steps ahead of, if not 10, at all times. Like, he is a mastermind, especially when it comes to battle strategies. So Thrawn, from the world of Chiss, or from the Chiss, basically in the unknown regions where him and Ezra went, he comes to the Empire and talks to the Emperor, basically impresses him, and rises through the ranks of the Empire to become a Grand Admiral. And he's just super cool, man. I don't know what else I can really say about Thrawn other than he's the most badass character in this show. That I don't know, like, he's so cool. You'll see if you haven't experienced much of Thrawn yet, if you haven't read any of his novels, because after they had the whole, expanded universe of novels and everything, and once he was brought back into canon, his original author, Timothy Zahn, came back to Star Wars to write not just one trilogy of books, but two. Two trilogies of books. One of them's even a prequel to the first one. But basically, they detail his journey through the Empire and becoming a part of it in the original books, and then there's a prequel that kind of tells of Thrawn's time before the Empire and what led to it. And the biggest thing in that whole kind of prequel story is that the Chiss were dealing with this threat in the unknown regions called the Grisk. And the Grisk are basically these, like, I don't even know how to call it, like, I think they're almost lizard-like. I don't even know. There's not really too much known about them. They even wear, like, a veil over themselves to kind of hide themselves, right? Like, they're some creepy dudes. But they are, like, this entire, I don't know, like, legion, I guess you could say, of these aliens that want to take over everything. Like, they're out for nothing but destruction and taking over not just one galaxy, but the entire universe, basically. Like, they are crazy. They're bad news. And so Thrawn ends up attacking, or basically leading a counterattack against the Grisk at the end of these prequel trilogy of books that leads to them going off. But he knows that they're going to come back at some point and try to counterattack themselves. And so Thrawn ends up joining with the Empire to try and see if the Empire can basically be an ally to his people and to the Chiss, or if they're going to be something that Thrawn could potentially, ends up weakening, and Thrawn ends up throwing in front of the Grisk as like, you take them instead. You know what I mean? Like, that's at least what he was thinking in the books. Maybe Thrawn still thinks that him as the leader can make a difference and try and use the Empire, or the remnants of the Empire at this point, to try and fend off the Grisk, if that's even the story that Filoni's continuing. We'll see, because he does like to retcon stuff in books a lot of the time. So We'll see what exactly he does, but I got a lot of high hopes for this series, man. There is so much hype with this Ahsoka show, and I am ready. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the chat. And yes, all proceeds are going again to the SAG-AFTRA and WGA strikes. If you guys want to support the stream, Tim just threw in a link there to our StreamYard. I'm going to pin that up there in the chat. CT0420, it is good to see you, my man, Brandon Tran. Darth Kev, what up, my dude? He said, yo, just got in here. Tonight is the night. So hype. Yo, let's go, man. I am hyped too. And tonight is the night. Look, I'm so sweaty. My hair is going crazy. It's hyped, though. It's hyped in here, man. Thrawn deserves his own standalone movie, says Brandon Tran. He kind of does. And I got to say, you know, Dave Filoni is set to have a movie in the next couple of years. And I definitely think that Thrawn is the big bad of that. I don't know how many seasons the Ahsoka show might be. I think it could at least be like 2, hopefully like 4. That'd be cool. But I think that we're going to get at least a couple seasons of Ahsoka and maybe another season of The Mandalorian. And it's going to lead to this Dave Filoni movie that's going to be like the conclusion of the story with Thrawn. So that is everything that you need to know before Ahsoka, like that happened before the show. But in the show, it's time for some last predictions and to kind of talk about what's going on. This show takes place basically 10 years after Star Wars Rebels, or about 5 or 6 years or so after Return of the Jedi, Episode 6. And it's around the same time as The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, all of those kind of shows. Not Kenobi. Kenobi takes place at a different time. But Mando, Book of Boba, and Ahsoka are all taking place basically in the same time frame. And Ahsoka is kind of continuing those stories. I actually wouldn't be surprised. Big prediction here. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing Din Djarin and Grogu in the series. Especially because the Ahsoka show is gonna kind of be like a Star Wars Rebels Season 5. And again, if you haven't seen the animated shows, you're missing out here, because the show is kind of a continuation of the continuation with the Clone Wars being the original show, Rebels kind of being a continuation of Clone Wars, and then now the Ahsoka show being a continuation of all of it, of Rebels, Clone Wars, all of Star Wars pretty much. So, like I was saying though, could we see live action flashbacks with Hayden wearing Clone Wars armor and Ahsoka? Yeah, throw in any last predictions you guys have in here. Could we see live action flashbacks with Hayden wearing Clone Wars armor? Bro, I hope so. I definitely think it's possible. A long time ago in our galaxy, actually, it was rumored that Hayden Christensen could be in the show, or was supposed to be in the show, apparently. So maybe I definitely think it's possible. I would be super excited. Actually, there was a teaser, because they've been releasing so many trailers lately. There was a teaser recently that they released where you can hear Hayden talking, and it's not anything that we've heard before. It gets me so excited. It gets me freaking hyped, man. This show's going to be incredible. Mateo says, do we know how long the episodes are going to be? So, episodes 1 and 2 coming out later tonight. I think that it's supposed to be combined about an hour and 45 minutes that we're getting tonight, which is almost like a movie. That's like a feature movie back in the day, you know what I mean? We're getting a movie's worth of Ahsoka tonight, y'all. The hype is real. It's freaking real. Let's go. Okay. Where were we? So, with this show, though, taking place about 10 years after Return of the Jedi, there are 2 characters that were introduced in the trailers named Baylan and Shin, who have these orange lightsabers and kind of white yellowish platinum looking hair, right? Those characters are super interesting to me, especially with their last names being Shin and Hati. And while Dave Filoni has an absolute obsession with wolves, it just only continues here with Shin and Hati being the wolves of Ragnarok in Norse mythology, which basically one of them circles the sun, the other one circles the moon, and they also signify the start of Ragnarok, the end of times for the Norse gods. And so they also are wolves. That's what Shin and Hati are in Norse mythology, which is why Dave Filoni's wolf obsession is just out of control. We love it, though. We love it. And then there's another character that was kind of introduced in the trailers that is Inquisitor, an Inquisitor-looking dude. So it doesn't really make sense for an Inquisitor to be around at this time period. Inquisitors were basically, the last time that we saw Inquisitors canonically would have been the end of season 2 of Rebels, which would have been like one of the last times that we saw Ahsoka. So it doesn't really make too much sense for Inquisitors to be around. The Empire is remnants at this point. Palpatine and Vader are gone. All the other Inquisitors, as far as we know, are dead. So who is this guy? Who's this dude? And he's wearing armor that's super similar to another character in Star Wars Rebels that was an Inquisitor, who is known as the Force Brother. Like, their armor is like almost identical. But. The character in Rebels is an alien that has 4 fingers. 4 fingers, not 5. And the dude in the Ahsoka trailer's got 5. He's got 5 fingers. And as far as we know from the promotional material that has released, apparently his name, or the name that, the code name, I don't know if it's a name, a code name, they could be throwing us off completely. But the name for this Inquisitor character is apparently Merrick, or Marok. I'm going with Merrick because, come on now, Marok though. And if you translate Marok, or Merrick, or whatever you want to call it, it basically translates to a knight thought to be a wolf, or thought to be a werewolf, which again, Dave Filoni and his wolf obsession. A knight thought to be a werewolf. So it could totally mean that this character is supposed to be a good person that they think is, that you think is bad. Like, it's totally possible. If that's the case, maybe that's Ezra Bridger. I mean, we haven't really seen Ezra Bridger in any of the promotional material so far for Ahsoka, other than the little hologram that Sabine's holding. So maybe this Merrick character could actually be Ezra. We know that he likes to take armor and wear other armor and stuff, and he always likes his disguises, even his names. He goes by Jabba the Hutt, Lando Calrissian. I mean, the dude's awesome. So maybe it is Ezra Bridger that is this Merrick character, a knight thought to be a wolf, as he's a Jedi. Or a werewolf. But there's another character in Star Wars from the EU that I think it could be, and that I'm hoping it is. I mean, don't get me wrong, y'all. I don't have expectations for this show. We're going into a Dave Filoni masterpiece. When that happens, you sit down, you turn your TV on, and you enjoy. Because, oh man, is Dave Filoni cooking up some heat. But I think that Marok could be Galen Merrick from the Expanded Universe, also known as Starkiller from the Force Unleashed games. Starkiller is played by Sam Witwer. He even has his likeness as well as his voice. He is an absolute fan favorite video game character of many, many fans, especially my age. Starkiller also was created around the same time as Ahsoka. He's also an apprentice of not Anakin Skywalker like Ahsoka is, but of Darth Vader. So he's kind of the dark side version of Ahsoka in a way. Heck, when the two were created, both of them held lightsabers like this. Both of them. That's weird. We don't see people hold lightsabers like this, but the two of them, they did. Gotta fix this now. The two of them did, though. And it was so interesting. I was like, dude, Vader just can't. This guy can't control his students. They both hold their lightsaber wrong. So, if this Marok character is Galen, or, you know, if this is who I think it is, it's huge. A lot of fans have been hoping that Starkiller would come back into canon at some point, or come into canon at some point. There's been a lot of teases lately. And I was working on a video. I didn't really get to finish it yet because there's been a lot of stuff going on around. But dude, they've been teasing the hell out of Starkiller's return. They really have. And if you look around, in Andor, we got to see the evil Starkiller suit. That obviously they're saying it's some like ancient Mandalorian armor potentially, right? But back in the Obi-Wan show, a lot of people potentially missed this. There's this room basically that had all these Jedi names on it. We see Quinlan Vos, I think, and Obi-Wan's like seeing all this stuff. And it was during the path. It was basically a room for the path that Obi-Wan was staying in. And in some of the concept art, there was a name on there that really, really stood out to us Force Unleashed fans. No, it wasn't Galen Merrick, I promise you. It was Ram Koda. And if you know the Force Unleashed games, Ram Koda is a Jedi that Starkiller, the apprentice of Vader, who's kind of like an Inquisitor, kind of almost an inspiration for the Inquisitors in a way, I think. But he basically was sent off just like the Inquisitors to go kill Jedi, and one of the Jedi he was sent to kill was this guy named Ram Koda. A total badass. He kind of reminds me of Kanan Jarrus, which, again, I'll get to that in another second here. But Ram Koda ends up getting blinded by Starkiller. He ends up becoming his master, though. And in throughout the first game and then in the second game, as Galen Merrick turns against Darth Vader and turns to the good side, Ram Koda becomes his master, and his name was on concept art for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. I mean, it wasn't noticeable in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, so it was just in concept art. But it was there. It was Ram Koda was there, fam. So, continuing with my theory here. Both of them are apprentices of Anakin and Vader. And Anakin was the chosen one. But I honestly don't know if it's in the way that most Star Wars fans think. I don't. I think that he was the chosen one for Mortis, which is the whole point of that arc in the Clone Wars in a way. Anakin was supposed to stay on the planet or the realm of Mortis and take the place of the father, who was the one in between, the light and the dark, which Anakin does have both the light and the dark within him. So Anakin ends up saying, heck no, I like Padme, I'm going to go stay with her, which can't blame the guy. But he gets revealed like what his future will be. It ends up getting wiped from his mind. But I digress. Anakin was supposed to be the replacement for the father, the one in between that balanced both the light and the dark. Except he left. And Ahsoka became the daughter in a way, or she I guess gained the essence, or the light side essence within the daughter ends up going to Ahsoka to bring her back to life. Except the brother technically dies too, but what if there is a being out there that has the entity of the brother? I mean, the ones are so strong and so insane with the Force, like we don't even know half the stuff with them. But what if Starkiller is this brother? What if Merrick is the brother, or has the essence of the brother within him? I will say, real quick, just, temper your expectations with the whole Starkiller thing. Obviously, who knows? And it's a big theory of mine. But Sam Witwer once was talking about if Starkiller would return, or just, if Dave Filoni would ever bring him in, or whatever the case is. And he said straight up, like, he thinks if Dave ever did it, or if they ever brought Starkiller in, it wouldn't be quite the same. It wouldn't be exactly, he wouldn't exactly be the same character from the EU, which, that makes sense. So, I mean, changing from Merrick to Marok, like, that's pretty close. Alright, to cap off this whole Starkiller theory, because I totally think it's Starkiller that is Merrick. I really do. The same celebration in 2022, when I talked to Ashley Eckstein, I also had the opportunity to talk to Sam Witwer. And I asked him a couple of questions, but the main one I wanted to ask him, Do you think that Starkiller will return or ever come into canon? That was the exact thing I asked him, basically, was, do you think that Starkiller will ever come into canon? His answer, yes, it's possible. It's possible, was basically like, so, I mean, you put the pieces of the puzzle together. I'm just saying, I hope. It doesn't have to be. I'm cool with whatever the case is. Again, like I was saying before, the whole knight thought to be a werewolf, that definitely could mean it is Ezra. And in a lot of ways, Ezra is very similar to a canon version of Starkiller. Obviously, Ezra is more in the light side from the very beginning, but he does have some dark side tendencies at one point, which why it wouldn't exactly surprise me if he's wearing a whole Inquisitor looking suit. Again, he likes taking suits. Like, if anybody knows where that Inquisitor suit would be, or where to find an Inquisitor suit and like blend in, it would be Ezra. So Ezra also has a master that, like I said, is very similar to Ramkota. Kanan Jarrus is the master of Ezra Bridger, and he ended up going blind as well. Ezra is very similar, and probably the closest thing we've had to Starkiller in canon, in my opinion. And it would make sense if Marok ends up being Ezra. I'll just put that out there. I mean, that would be crazy, right? Right? I mean, I'm just saying, like, it could be. That was going to be the video I made, though. I didn't get to finish it. What up, RF Gaming? Welcome into the channel, my dude. I am hype. I've been listening, just finally able to say hi. Half hour to go. Let's go. All right. Well, we probably should get on out of here pretty soon. I got the most of what I wanted to say out. That's my last big prediction. Any other predictions? I think that Sabine could be force sensitive and is likely training to be a Jedi. I would totally love to see Gareth Zeb Aurelius in this. I think Jason Syndulla, the son of Hera Syndulla and Kanan Jarrus, is going to appear or make an appearance. Chopper is probably going to kill a ton of people because he's the greatest droid in all of Star Wars. Much love, though. Thank you all for hanging out with us. I will see you in the watch party. Don't go too far. Make sure to subscribe. Smash that like button. Let's get the AHSOKA hype going, though. Let me see all the hype in the chat. Let's get it going. And I'll see you soon. Much love, everybody. And let's freaking go.